This episode is sponsored by Team Mojo, an organization that supports leaders who care about creating engaged and high-performing teams. We provide skills training and coaching in communicating expectations with team members and clients, giving meaningful feedback, delegating, and tracking performance. In short, we facilitate team alignment that creates higher commitment to the organization's purpose. Go to teammojo.ca for more information. Welcome to Suits and Sneakers, a series featuring sage advice and candid conversations with seasoned leaders from diverse backgrounds and styles. I'm your host, Carrie Tuttle. With my guests, we deep dive into areas of team engagement, motivation, and effective performance management. Get ready to be inspired and transform your approach to leadership. Please like, subscribe, or follow to be notified when future episodes are released. Let's get started. Today, I have the pleasure of having Hamish Knox, a member of this global Sandler network. Hamish supports private organizations in Southern Alberta, creating and maintaining scalable and repeatable consistent sales engines, and also engaged and motivated teams by holding them accountable to implement the structures, systems, and processes shared in Sandler sessions. So Hamish worked with a variety of industries, and they include media, communications, software, and professional sports also before joining the Sandler network, which melded his passions for sales and education. Hamish was named the 2020 David H. Sandler Award winner, which is Sandler's highest honor, and he was the first in Canada to be awarded that honor. He is also the first two-time author in the Sandler network, writing books on topics that no one likes to talk about, like change, which I have here, and we want to talk about this today, as well as Accountability the Sandler Way. That's his other book. There we go. There it is. Hamish is regularly invited by the home office of Sandler to speak at the Train the Trainer conferences, as well as Sandler's public summit conferences in Orlando. Hamish is committed to giving back so entrepreneurs can enjoy the same opportunities that he had when he launched his business. Hamish is an active member with Futurepreneur Canada, is a Maple Leaf Club donor to Enactus Canada, and is a volunteer judge for regional and national student entrepreneur competitions. So thank you so much for joining us today, Hamish. I really appreciate it. And I definitely want to dive into this book today because change is something most of our audience is new leaders. So when you approach a new leadership role, no matter what you do, even if you kept everything the same, things are still different because there's a new leader in place. Totally. What made you want to write a book about implementing change?
Well, facetiously, Carrie, it was because I was asked. So I had written my book on accountability, and my editor came to me and said, you give me like print ready copy. Like, yes, I need to edit it and, clean it up a little bit. And my editor, Yusuf, is the editor in the best sense of the word because he makes my stuff better. He doesn't try to insert his own worldview into my content. So literally we were talking and he's like, hey, do you want to write another book? I was like, yeah, sounds good to me. And then, of course, he says, well, what do you want to write it about? And I had a couple of ideas. He's like, yeah, those are already in the pipeline. What do you think about change? And I was like, okay, because I had just done a session in our sales leadership group on change management. And I thought, yeah, let's look at the human side of change, because as I dug into it, and, Sandler's got some really great content around change management, change is super simple, right? So to use your example, change is this leader today, that leader tomorrow. That's change. That's it. Change is a light switch. However, we have these squishy emotional creatures in our businesses called humans, and humans don't change, they transition. And it's very similar to the 5 stages of grief, where transition is denial, resistance, acceptance, and then ultimately they evolve into whatever change the behavior that we want, whether that's going from reporting this leader, reporting that leader, or something else. So ultimately, because I love supporting our learners in creating more effective human-to-human interactions, professionally and personally, that's why change really resonated with me, because change is treated as this external nebulous thing, and it's very, very personal for everybody. So when every member of our team is going to go through their own journey, and not everybody's going to make it all the way to the other side. and still be a member of our team. So I wanted to give leaders tools to understand the human side of change so that they could actually have a much more effective change experience for them and for their team members.
And I love how you equate it to the stages of grief, because if you think about it, any change that you go through, you're letting go of something else. So I find that a really interesting parallel. It stood out to me right away when I was looking at the book. So what do you think that new leaders especially, but maybe all leaders, struggle the most with in implementing changes?
Well, it's because the first thing, Carrie, is leaders are human, at least for now, as far as I know. And they go through all those stages of transition back here. Because as a leader, if we're going to roll out a new comp plan, we're going to move the office location from this part of the city to that part of the city, or we're going to open up a new branch in another province, territory, state, country, whatever. We had to do that way back here. 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 months. We went through all of those changes. And then fast forward to when we roll it out to our larger team, we've forgotten that we went through those. And so when we roll it out, we're like, why isn't everyone going, great idea, boss? Because we've forgotten. So the first place we go offside is forgetting that we experience the same things just back here.
Because our initial feelings of denial, like this isn't going to work or something like that, are long gone. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you also talk about a really interesting concept in the book about the roles people take, roles that team members might take in their acceptance of change. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, and they are angels, agnostics, and atheists for the audience. And so, I am an author, so I like alliteration. And of course, Sandler is an American-based company, and so when I put angels, agnostics, and atheists as a chapter heading, I got a little bit of pushback, and then I helped my colleagues understand that it had no religious overtones. I was talking about change champions, the angels, change deniers, the atheists, and then the fence sitters, the agnostics. And so typically breaks down 20, 60, 20. You get 20% angels, 60% agnostics, 20% atheists. It's not a hard and fast number, but approximately. And we have always been taught, like traditional change management training, and I did some of that even before I started my Sandler business, is you go to your atheists and you beg them and you coach them and you cajole them and you threaten them to get on board. And ultimately, that is a whole bunch of wasted mental and emotional energy, not only on the part of the leader, but on the part of the atheists who are there by choice and not going to change. So what in the book I encourage leaders to do is work with your angels, and work with your angels to bring your agnostics up. And the agnostics are often the veteran team members who have been through way too many flavor of the month type changes, whether it was with us as the leader or it's just their bad experiences from the past. And sometimes we need cousin Steve or cousin Susan, that's an angel, to go talk to the agnostic and be like, okay, I know mom or dad, the leader, is saying it this way. Here's what I'm doing. Here's why I'm on board, et cetera, to be able to get those agnostics to move. And then with the atheists, we let them go be more successful elsewhere.
Yeah. So as I think about those atheists, those people who are very resistant, it's probably that it doesn't matter what the change is. They're going to be resistant no matter what. They just don't want change and they're going to dig their heels in and that's it. So they should, like you say, go find their happy place and their comfort zones at another place where it's exactly like they used to do it.
Absolutely. And it's not linear, right? So we often, as leaders, we think of change as a linear process, which is like change. Again, change is a linear process, right? We're going to implement a new CRM or whatever it might be. Transition is not a linear process. And so as we are going through our change action from start all the way to finish, those numbers are going to rebalance themselves. And some of the agnostics will become angels. Some of the agnostics will become atheists. And it will change over time. Now, yes, the agnostics will shrink as the change goes through because the majority of them will be like, well, this is actually happening. This isn't a flavor of the month. And some of them will get part of the way through and go, hey, this was great till now. And then they'll become atheists and they'll move on.
And that's a tough thing for some leaders to talk about or think about, is that they're going to leave somebody behind. And they would like to see everybody change. So as you think about mapping it out so that they don't think it's the flavor of the month, how can leaders do that so that they're bringing everyone along at each stage?
So the first thing that a leader has to do is actually get really comfortable with who's probably not going to make the journey. So one of the exercises I coach leaders to do is, take your current team, write down the first names only, and then put an X or a check mark next to each person who you believe is going to make it to the end of the change. This is not a judgment call on the value of that person as a human being. It's to help frame us out for, okay, if I believe that this individual in this role is not going to make it all the way through, I need to start recruiting or looking for someone to fill that role now. So should it come to pass that person moves on, I have someone who can step in and keep the change going, because otherwise the wheel is going to break and my change bus is going to fall off the highway. So I need to make sure I do that. The other thing that we need to do is lead by our behavior. Right? Human beings are behavior-based creatures, and it doesn't matter what the leader says, it matters what the leader does. So we as leaders need to be leading by example. So if I use the CRM example, I as the leader need to be in the CRM. My people need to be able to see me that I'm adding content, I'm pulling reports, I'm showing them the behavior that is expected. Or if it's something more external, like we've got a new benefits plan and we have to use a new app to access our benefits and make claims and things like that, I need to kick off by saying, hey guys, I've got the app and here I've made some claims and this is what it looked like and this was my frustrations. Make it real for them, because nothing is perfect, Carrie.
Yes.
You and I both know that. And so if as a leader, we can come to our team and go, I've already tried it and this is what went well. This is what frustrated me. This is how I got over those frustrations. Then it's much more likely to succeed.
Definitely. So going back to your idea of having a bit of an understanding of where all of the team members are at and might be in the future, I think also there's that idea of we're trying to get somewhere new. We're making a change for a reason. There's a goal. So talk about how we can map each person's capabilities to that new goal.
I love this question. So again, going back to behavior, right? So we as leaders, we get to define the mountaintop, right? And we get to identify like the camps along the way, because it's not a straight shot from the top of the mountain. All of us know that. And from someone who's messed that journey up, please take it from me. It's not a straight shot to the top of the mountain. You do need to take breaks. You need to have waypoints and guide points. So as leaders, we design the mountaintop. We're allowed to put the waypoints in that we think are going to demonstrate progress. However, we enroll our team in helping us design where we are, base camp, to camp 1, to camp 2, all the way to the top of the mountain. And we need to be flexible to let our team go, hey, boss, I know you say camp 2 is here. We think it should be here, and here's why. And to get them to buy in, because when it comes out of their mouth, it's real. When it comes out of our mouth, we're becoming pushy. And so when we do things like that up front, we can start to get a sense of how our team members react in the moment is going to give us an indication as to whether or not they're going to make it to the other side. Another thing I'm a very big fan of is behavioral-based assessments. So we can really map out what are their behavioral preferences. I'm not interested in personality. I'm not interested in intelligence necessarily. What I'm interested in is behavior. And what is their, say, change tolerance behavior? Because that will give me a good sense as to how much support I'm going to need to give that person, and also how I'm going to need to communicate the change. Because at Sandler, we're very big fans of the DISC communication style. And if you are D dominant like I am, boss goes, hey, mountaintop. And we're like, we're already on the path, boss. Let's go, rock and roll. And if we flip over to the other side, the C dominant is going to be like, I need to see the map. I need to see the waypoints before I get going. So having a holistic picture of each team member from a communications profile and from a behavioral preference profile will also give me a lot of data to help me understand who's going to make it, who's not going to make it, and how do I need to support them along the way.
So for our leaders who are unfamiliar with assessments, you talked about DISC. How would they measure their people? And then how would they actually use that to adjust how they're leading?
That's a great question. And because there are lots of free assessments out there, right? And actually, I hate the word assessment because in Canada, at least, the word assessment means the government's coming and asking you for more money. That's typically what the word assessment means. So profile, survey, whatever, however we want to frame it. But ultimately, we want to find something that it has a scientific validation study behind it. So Extended Disc, who's our partner, they have all the validation surveys that you could ever want. Because if we go online and we just find the free thing, or maybe the thing that we decided to make up because we heard someone speak at a conference, all that measures is who we think we need to be or how we think we need to communicate. And human beings, we lie to ourselves, right? We either pump ourselves up or we push ourselves down. So by leveraging a third-party, scientifically valid survey, we actually get real data. And then taking that data and not using it as a scarlet letter, so to speak, right? There are no good DISC styles or perfect DISC styles. Taking that data and saying, okay, if I look at the map of my team, I have this many D's, I's, S's, and C's. So then as a leader, I'm going to need to communicate in that order. So leaders who are listening, D, I, S, and C in that order, because they'll hang out, right? The D's you'll lose right away. So if I'm going to roll out a change initiative, I might say, okay, group, we are moving the office from this part of the city to that part of the city, August 30th of this year. Boom, D's are covered. Then I go down to the I's. Hey, it's going to be really fun. We're going to have a lot of new space. It's going to be awesome. And so great. The I's are covered. It's going to be fun. They're going to have a good time. Hey, everybody, we know this is a big change. We are going to make sure that everybody feels completely supported. We're going to do a lot of conversations before we move. We're going to give you tools that pack up your belongings and your desks successfully so it can be very safely and easily transported over to the new office location. Okay, great. The S's are good. Now I'm going to walk you through the exact details that I have now from today all the way to the day that we're at our new desks. Now the C's are covered.
They're going to want a map, right? Like a floor plan. They're going to want to know what square footage they have in their desk.
Totally. And because some of the leaders who are listening are like, well, but sometimes I can't say all that. Like sometimes we're doing a merger and there's like legally I'm not allowed to say all this stuff. I can say this stuff. So as leaders, you have the right to say, I'm allowed to say this to you right now, or I have this information right now, and here's when I will be able to share more information with you, or here's when I believe I'm allowed to share more. Now, if I say here's when I believe, and I give a deadline, when that deadline comes, I have to give an update. Now, the update might be, hey, I believed it was this day. It's actually going to be this day. Because if that deadline passes, and as a leader, I'm like, well, I got nothing to say. No, you do, because you made a commitment to your team back here that you would give them information. That information might be, I got no more information.
And I think, humans, no matter who you are or what your personality style is, you have a certain level of need for certainty or security.
Totally.
And so we have different ways of serving that need, though, or fulfilling that need. When you think about, you've given some really good examples. So when you think about how you've used the principles that you shared in the book in your own business or in your own teams that you've managed, how have you seen those play out?
So one of the things that I had to learn, I'm a really great what person, right? Like I very easily talk about mountaintops and base camps and all that kind of stuff. That is how I'm wired. And I have a really awesome team member who helped me understand that I actually have to give a why first.
Okay.
So it's like, and they actually said to me like, yes, I understand what we're doing and I am completely on board with that. I actually have to understand why. In order for me to be engaged in whatever change I was talking about, I have to know the why. So that was a big learning for me as a leader is it's not about me, it's about my team. So I have to communicate and I have to meet my team where they're at, not where I'm at or where I think they should be. I've got to go to them and then we walk a path together, as opposed to me being here going, come on, guys, come on. Because some of my team are going to be like, awesome, dude, we're going to go somewhere else. And others are going to be like, okay, fine, we'll come here because I have a level of trust with them. However, by the time they get here, I've already broken rapport.
Well, and I've heard you say before that leadership is not a place to get your emotional needs met. Yeah.
Amen.
So I love that quote. Thinking about, you talked about guideposts along the way. So what are some performance measurements that people can use to help not only themselves as leaders, but to help the team know where you're at and if you're on track?
So the acronym that we use with our leaders is SOM. So specific, observable, measurable. So depending on what the change is that we are implementing, and we've talked about CRMs, we've talked about office moves, we've talked about new comp plans or new benefit plans. We define early what are the specific, observable, measurable activities that will indicate that we are moving towards success. And lock those in place, build them with the team, right? So it's not us dictating down. We're telling the team mountaintop, here's at the mountaintop, this is what I want to see. This is how I want to see you engaging with clients. This is how I want to see you engaging with our CRM. This is how I want to see you accessing our benefits plan. And then we have regular check-ins with our team. And again, that cadence will depend on the type of change that we are doing. So if we use the example of, today is beginning of April, we're moving by the end of August. Early on, we might have monthly, right? We might have a check-in in May and a check-in in June. Hey, everybody, here's the waypoints, here's the things. July, August, we're probably accelerating that. And so the more that we can communicate early with our team and get clarity and get buy-in, the more successful the change will be on the back end. So specific, observable, measurable, cadence of check-ins, make it a process and not an event where we announce the change and then it happens over here and everybody feels bad in between.
What watchouts or red flags would you highlight for leaders who are struggling with perhaps delegation or letting go throughout that process of change?
So there's a few things. Number one is pay attention to what the people do, not what the people say. Well, we've had a couple of leaders who were really devastated because they had a key lieutenant, right? So not a frontline person, but a key manager on their team who in front of the group was singing the same songs. They were like, yep, we're going to do this. And then after everyone went away, they went into the boss's office like, hey, boss, listen, I love you. I love this company. Where the company is going, I just don't see it as a fit for me, my skill set, whatever the answer is. And of course, even if that leader had done that exercise of who's going to make it to the end, they always had a check mark next to their key lieutenants because they're with them. And so that's number one is be prepared that someone who you feel is going to really help you through this transition, they may not make it because it doesn't actually connect with them or they see themselves going in a different direction that you're taking the company. The other key thing in terms of watch out, so it's delegation, not abdication. So this is a key thing that leaders screw up is they go, hey, Carrie, you could just take care of this, right? And of course, Carrie is going to go like, yeah, boss. Right. And maybe Carrie asks a couple of like high level questions, really not getting into the meat of it. And then now Carrie is going to go get stressed out. Because, right. And then it never happens. And then I'm going to go and be like, awesome, I have delegated that. And then fast forward to whenever I think, by the way, I just said, can you take care of this? I didn't take care of this by when. And that's a key thing for leaders. You must have buy-wins or you must have deadlines for absolutely everything because our priority is not our team members' priority. And so we have to communicate as a leader. If we are not communicating and creating clarity, that's our fault as a leader. That's not the fault of the person that we abdicated to or delegated to. So if you're having trouble, if you just don't want to do it, you got to make sure you delegate it. One of my bosses used to say, "Hey, Hamish, can you do this for me by this time, right? I need this by this time." I'd say, "Got it." And they would say, "Awesome. Would you say back to me in your own words what you think I just asked you to do?" And it was kind of cool because sometimes I'm like, I would say it and they'd be like, "That's not what I asked you to do."
Yeah. So interpretation
But we
is
could do it early.
I guess, an opportunity for miscommunication to happen.
100%, right? 100%. So now let's go to the other side. And this is this usually happens, especially with leaders who have domain expertise, right? So if you were an IT technician before you founded your company, you have domain expertise in technical IT. And I find that leaders who have domain expertise, or they were the best salesperson, now they're the sales leader, they have real trouble delegating. Because oftentimes, and they've actually said it to me in coaching sessions, well, I could do it faster or better or more effectively or whatever than they can. And my response is then why did you hire them? I just saved you $80,000 on your G&A expenses. So mindset for all the leaders out there who are struggling with that: delegate even when they won't do it like you, because they're not you and they never will do it like you. However, you hired them for a reason. And I know in my experience on my team, I will delegate something to someone who is not me. I can do it at this moment better or faster or more effectively, doing air quotes for the audio listeners out there. And they come back and they're like, "Hey, yeah, so I did the thing. And anyways, I discovered we could do it this way." And it actually is a massive step change in terms of productivity, efficacy, efficiency that I never would have thought of. And if I hadn't given that freedom for them to go complete the task by the deadline in their own way, we never would have realized those gains.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that, because people have different perspectives that they're bringing. They have different skill sets and talents, and those are different than ours. So we want to leverage that wherever we can. I love that. And you started to talk about communication and the fact that you want to communicate a deadline and what you're looking for, or sort of the outcome, but not necessarily the how. What else do especially new leaders need to be aware of when it comes to communicating change and progress on change?
They need to be as clear as possible within, again, the bounds that they have, whether it's legal or they literally just don't know, right? Vulnerability is a leader's greatest source of strength. And so instead of baffle gabbing our team members with stories that we've made up in our own heads about what it's going to look like or progress or whatever, you're allowed to say, "I don't know." You're 100% allowed to say, "I don't know. And here's what I believe." You're allowed to also say, "I believe this," because when we say believe, it tells the person listening that it's not for sure. It is a bit of a story. And so when we say, "I don't know, and here's what I'm doing to get clarity," that raises our credibility with our team members, because they see that we are working just as hard as they are in managing this change, because they want to see that the leader is not, again, throwing the ball over to them and going, "Hey guys, go run with this, please." Because I've been involved in a couple of implementations, again, before I started my Sandler business, where literally that was how the message felt to us. And something else for the leaders to keep in mind: it does not matter what we say. It matters what they hear. And so we might say something that we think is brilliant. Our lawyers might have crafted it down. It's on message. It's amazing. And when we say it, our team hears something completely different. And the water cooler, the whatever, the digital water cooler, the Slack channels, the whatever, those are going to light up real quick with stories that our team members are making up if we as leaders are not.
So it sounds like leaders need to get their team members to feed it back to them not just once, but regularly to get a temperature check and see
Yeah,
where they're at and see how they're interpreting the change over
totally.
time.
Totally. And give your team members that permission to share what's
Mm,
actually going on and the protection that when they do say something that is maybe not what we wanted to hear, that we're not going to beat them up over it. And now I don't expect any leader listening is physically going to attack a team member. Again, it doesn't matter what we say, it matters what they hear. And if they feel that they genuinely came to us to share how they were feeling or share that something is not going as well as we thought it
mm,
would, they thought it would, and we discount it, we dismiss it, or we actually come back and say, well, you just need to figure
mhm.
it out then, that's going to be
Yeah.
detrimental.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. By the way, do you think there's any place where vulnerability maybe we take it too far or where it should not exist? What would you say to that?
So there is a difference between vulnerability and uh, being emotionally sloppy. We'll
Okay.
just call it that. So, yes, as leaders, we have emotions. We're
Mhm.
still humans. And our job as leaders is not to get our emotional needs met on our
Mm.
team members. So we are certainly allowed to say, hey team, new benefits plan, here's where I got frustrated, right? That's a human thing. However, to walk our team through the ups and the downs and the pitfalls of everything that led us to today,
No.
it's not okay. They don't need to hear that. They don't care. Not because they don't care about us as a leader. That's not beneficial in terms of getting them from here to here, which is ultimately where we are today through the
Yeah,
end of
we
the
want to
change.
smooth out the roller coaster for them, not bring them along on
Yeah,
all of the dips and the whiplash. Yeah.
1000%.
Um, I'm thinking about where you get your information. What sources do you use to learn more about, the latest on leadership techniques and, whether it's podcasts or whatnot or books? What do you recommend for leaders out there?
So I'm a very big fan of learning about human psychology, right? So we're right now, we are, unless you are like very technical, you're coding, you're doing, you're doing engineering or whatever, where like literally you flip to a book or you go into the wiki and you can find it. It's human to human. Right. So learning about human to human. So I'm a big fan of the Knowledge Project, Shane Parrish's podcast, his book called Clear Thinking, which came out. It's all about decision making. So I am looking for tools and resources that help me understand the human condition a little bit more. So I am a huge fan of Harvard Business Review. I love Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say that Sandler does publish a lot of very good content on a regular basis, both in blogs and white paper formats. I am also a huge, huge, huge fan of Milena Palmer's The Brainy Business Podcast. She's a behavioral economist, and she's had, if any of you who, Cialdini or Lencioni or Robert Taylor, who wrote Nudge, she not only references them, but she has them on as guests. And it's really fascinating to learn about what is new and cutting edge in the world of behavioral economics, because ultimately that's what we are all doing on our day to day when
Thank
we're
you.
interacting with other human beings.
Thank you for that, Hamish. So, thinking of what's going on in your world, what would you like to share with our listeners that you are working
Mm.
on these days?
I don't know if we have another hour and a half on the recording there, Carrie. So, on the business side, so I have my own podcast called Full Funnel Freedom, and that's a separate company that runs that. So, growing and expanding
Yeah.
Full Funnel Freedom, we've got some incredible guests who are going to be coming out between when we're recording this in April
Mhm.
and throughout the summer and throughout the rest of the year. So that is a super cool thing that I'm excited about. And then on the Sandler side, expanding the level of support that we are providing to our clients. So we are really in that mode of sustainable sales growth support. So supporting entrepreneurs and sales leaders who have a vision of their future that is bigger than their present. They want to get there in a way that's not going to be that, rise and crash. And for the entrepreneurs that we work with, how can we support them in exiting for their number, not the number they're told to take? I'm actually working with an entrepreneur right now through a partner of mine who does the exits for me on exiting at a, what might end up being a really significant multiple, which would be very life-changing for them and their family. I love
hearing stories like that. So can't wait to hopefully you'll be celebrating with them, and can't wait to hear about that. So okay, so last thing that I know everybody wants to hear. What advice would you give to your younger self going into your first leadership role?
Wow. Again, 90 more minutes of content available. So a couple of things. I mentioned understanding the why, right? So that was something I've shared already, is like, you got to give your team members a why in addition to the what's. The other thing would be trust but verify. So I am not dramatically detail oriented. I used to be a sports journalist. I love stats. I love analyzing stats. I love looking at ratios and things like that in financial statements. And like the general rote numbers, they just don't resonate with my brain. I get tired very easily. It's not something I like to do. And so I would trust team members with what they said they were going to do. I lead with trust. And they would say, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm working on this, et cetera, and I would trust them, but I wouldn't verify. And then fast forward 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever it might be, and be like, hey, a few weeks back, you were talking about this and this and this. I'm just like, I'm not seeing the results on the back end. Well, you don't understand. I been really busy, and it was like, okay, that's my fault as a leader, not their fault. Because if I had trusted but then verified, I would have understood that, like maybe even when they first said it to me, that it was a bunch of nonsense. Or very early on, I would have been able to say, hey, it kind of feels like you're going sideways. How can I support?
So it's checking in really regularly and also looking at data. Is that what you mean? Or what can leaders do to create that verification step?
Have those leading indicators. So going back to specific, observable, measurable, I'm a huge believer in leading indicators instead of lagging indicators, and those leading indicators tell the story. And something that we share with our leaders that we support is, if your behaviors, your activities are consistent, your results will be consistent. And of course, the counter to that is, if your behaviors, your activities are inconsistent, your results will be inconsistent. And that applies whether that's a frontline client-facing team member, whether that's a technical person doing lines of code, or that's us as leaders going, yeah, sure, okay, good, look forward to seeing that, and not actually being consistent with how we are supporting our team members. It's not micromanagement. It's genuine support.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for everything you shared today, Hamish. I really appreciate you taking the time and having you on the show. If you are hoping to connect with Hamish, the best way to find him is hamish.sandler.com, and feel free to book a meeting with him or book some time. And please dial in and subscribe to the Full Funnel Freedom podcast as well. So thank you again, and take care, everyone. We're happy you joined us for Suits and Sneakers. If you want to be an expert guest, look for the link in the show notes. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify or YouTube.